I would be delighted to be with all of you anytime because I think GLSEN is such a terrific organization fomenting so much change in our schools around the country, for which I am very, very grateful. And I'm especially delighted to be with you tonight, celebrating your successes in the last year. I had the pleasure to join GLSEN up close last week at UNESCO when I represented the United States, where countries around the world affirmed the first ever global commitment to eliminate discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in schools. That pledge, as you know, follows at least a decade of critical work to recognize internationally harm of this type and the need for reform. And its implementation will mean profoundly changed school circumstances for LGBTI students worldwide. I was deeply impressed and grateful to witness the leadership from Eliza and from Joe here at GLSEN in advancing this critical conversation among the assembled non-governmental organizations at UNESCO. The world's children thank you, as do I, for the justice you have advocated for all these years, and that the UNESCO countries, including the United States, committed themselves to last week. Here in the United States, the Department of Education has continually worked to ensure that all students are treated with equal dignity consistent with our federal civil rights laws. Just over a week ago, as Eliza mentioned, my office, together with the Department of Justice, released guidance answering questions from educators, parents, and students about how our federal civil rights laws apply to transgender students in schools. The Department of Education also released a compilation of examples of ways that schools across the country already are successfully supporting our transgender students in schools. These resources are an important next step in achieving the core civil rights goal that Congress set for our schools more than 50 years ago, that schools do not discriminate against students based on who they are. Because K-12 education is mandatory, questions come up regularly about how to serve students who are required to be in class together. Those of us in this room know that the business of education is hard. Our educators have the most precious people in the entire world to every parent in their charge, and they must try to meet every student's individual needs while significantly advancing their knowledge. Inevitably, our schools teach students from a range of backgrounds with the full spectrum of gender, race, national origin, and ability status. And a core function of schooling is teaching these diverse students about how to learn and how to interact together, respecting all their rights and securing safe spaces for each of them. Just as inevitably, therefore, our educators have questions about the best ways to protect the dignity of each student consistent with the law. My office does not, and with this transgender guidance did not, make new law. My office enforces the law that Congress wrote as interpreted by the courts. And to help schools protect all students consistent with the law, we answer questions about schools' obligations under the existing laws passed by Congress. Congress prohibited sex discrimination in school in 1972. The courts, including the Supreme Court, have interpreted that law consistently over the years. To assist schools, we answered questions about what that law means for transgender students. What we said was that the law protects transgender students and all students and prohibits discrimination against them and all students based on assumptions or stereotypes about gender identity. It is that simple. The step we took to issue guidance explaining how to satisfy existing law is incredibly important, even as it is simple, for all of our students in all of our schools. The guidance assists schools in understanding what they can do to ensure that a transgender student is safe and can learn. And the guidance assists schools in helping to ensure the dignity and privacy of students who are not transgender, and to ensure that they likewise are protected and that all students can learn in safe school environments. Our goal is to help schools teach each student to his and her full potential, secure in who they are, and respected as learners. Thomas Aberle, a Louisville, Kentucky high school principal who has worked for years to support his students in school, put it best last week when he said in the New York Times, "What you don't do is go tell a kid, you know, there is something so freakishly different about you that you make other people uncomfortable, so we're going to make you do something different." As Principal Aberle explained, our school's job and our civil rights mandate is that schools take kids for who they are and educate them to function in the world fairly, with knowledge and critical thinking and competence. It's not surprising to hear from schools and districts and states around the country who responded to our guidance saying they're already doing the things that the guidance describes. They know how to serve their kids, and their creativity and compassion in responding to each student's needs is an inspiration to me and a healthy example for all of us. Congress created my office with a specific mandate to ensure that no student suffers in school from discrimination based on protected identity status. Today, we have 49 million students in K-12 schools in nearly 100,000 school districts around the country, and another 18 million students in some 7,000 colleges and universities. Every single one of those students is relying on my office aggressively to enforce their rights to equal justice each day when they are in school. They can't wait. They aren't hoping to do fourth grade or sophomore year or any year over again. Their time is now, today, to learn and to grow and to fulfill their dreams for the productive citizens whom they will become. Our schools need to be ready today to teach them. We don't have time to think about it, to wait, or to vacillate. We need to teach our kids now. Waiting does not promote change, does not promote the hard, careful thinking necessary to respond to the unique needs each student presents in school each day. Waiting relegates us to the status quo when our beloved students, who are our future, struggle for acceptance and struggle for guidance about how to interact together while they do the important job we mandate of them, to learn so they can vote, so they can govern, so they can teach, so they can participate in our society when they finish school. Waiting turns our backs on our students. Waiting sends the unmistakable message that you don't count, we're not prepared for you, and maybe later things will get better for someone else. As a matter of human decency, as a lesson learned from our recent past, and consistent with the law Congress gave us as interpreted by the courts, we must make sure that right now, schools understand their obligations to protect our kids. I and my 600 staff around the country take our responsibility very seriously. We are not sleeping on your students' rights. We issued the guidance a little over a week ago as one way to act now, and there are other ways. We are glad to enforce. My office receives more than 10,000 complaints each year, and we investigate every single one over which we have jurisdiction. Thank you. I hate following that applause with the bad news, but in that work, we learn of devastating harms to LGBTI students and gender nonconforming students. We act aggressively to correct those harms, but the harms are real, and they are present for our students today, even as we hear some success stories tonight, and they were beautiful so far already tonight. I want to tell you about the kinds of harms that we've recently redressed. In a case in Pennsylvania, our investigation established that a student was assaulted in class. A picture the student drew of himself was defaced with the word gay written on the picture. The student was called anti-gay epithets, and student witnesses told us that school staff heard or saw the harassment but refused to respond. In a case in Florida, we investigated a complaint from a mother of a student who had attempted suicide and who is now in a permanently, very severely brain injured condition, after the student had been subjected to harassment based on perceived gender stereotypes at school. The student complained to the district, and the student's mother complained to the district, but the district's position was that it had not known. Our investigation uncovered that the district had known, that the student had confided in a teacher, that the student had been harassed for acting like a girl, and the teacher told the student to ignore the comments and to not behave in such an effeminate manner. That mother will never get that student back. That student will never live his dreams. Similarly, when GLSEN came to us, we investigated similar facts in Minnesota. In Illinois, you may have heard last year, we investigated and found a district in violation because the district did not allow a transgender girl access to the locker room together with her teammates and in her required physical education class for more than 2 years. In a case here in New York, a transgender college student complained to us that her college was discriminating against her by requiring her to use a faculty restroom rather than a student restroom, by continuing to note her birth name on her attendance rosters and not taking corrective measures when her classmates misgendered her. These are some of the cases that come to us from students who are in school right now, who need answers, whose schools need answers about how to apply the laws against sex discrimination to their particular circumstances. In each of these cases, we got the individual redress that the students need. We secured changes to the school's records. We got the students into the locker rooms and the bathrooms. We secured counseling for those students. And where it was necessary, we also secured systemic relief in the schools, changing policy, changing training, ensuring going forward that other students would not be subjected to the harm that these students experienced. No student should experience the facts that I describe. Our Congress, our courts, have long promised that our schools should be safe and supportive spaces where all students have equity of opportunity to learn and no students face barriers that diminish their educational experience. The Office for Civil Rights that I lead exists to make that promise a reality. And today, in this room, we know what Ella Baker said some 50 years ago. We who believe in freedom cannot rest waiting for it to come. To all here who are members of and who support GLSEN, know how grateful I am that GLSEN too is not resting and instead is actively working in so many schools around the country and around the globe to make sure our kids are safe and are respected for who they are. You matter, our kids matter, and our country needs you. Thank you.